Hi, I know this doesn't look awesome, but I'm recording an audiobook over there, so I had to kind of shift everything in order to build out a sound booth. So this is how it's gonna look for the next month and a half. So today we're gonna talk about book blurbs, and what I mean by that is the little comments. Here we go. Extremely funny, inspired lunacy, and over much too soon. The Washington Post book world. That's great. I didn't even look at a blurb on that, but it's a good one. Little sayings, little one sentence, maybe two sentences by some sort of official reviewing press or not, that's slapped on the back of a book, sometimes the front of a book, in order to give it a quick here's my endorsement. I want to talk about book blurbs today. I want to talk about what makes a book blurb, in my opinion, good or not so good, and also the why that. I was initially hoping to make this video be informative as well as just discussing book blurbs. I wanted to go into what authors do or publishers do in order to get these blurbs on their books and what it might cost to get it done, what the process of it is, and then discussing, good ones versus bad ones and all that. But it's really hard. At least I had a really hard time finding information on the process of getting these little sayings on the book. So instead, this video is just going to be a reader's perspective. I will say from the research that I did do, I know that you can pay as an indie author or as a traditional author, you can pay to get Kirkus reviews or a couple of other big name reviewer platforms that are well known and accepted as this is a Kirkus review. That's a name that means something. And I looked on the website and a Kirkus review costs just under $500. So it's not cheap to get these done. And that's a full review. And then the blurb is just a section of the review that gets posted on the book. And then I also know that there are some smaller authors that will pay bigger name authors to read their book and write them a blurb. I don't know what the cost of that is. I also know that some authors just do it for each other as a favor because they're friends. But I'm not a writer, so this is not my field of expertise. If you are a writer and you have some experience with this and you want to give us more information in the comments, I would love to hear from you. But today I want to talk to you about book blurbs because I have learned not to read them. When I'm trying to decide if I want to read a book or not, I look at the cover, I look at the description, and I look at the reviews. Those are the things that I look at. I don't even read the blurbs. I don't even give them any of my time or consideration because I find them to be useless so often. However, it's become a fun game for me to finish a book and then read the book blurbs and judge them. See if they would have actually helped me or not before I read the book. We're going to talk about the ones that I don't think are very helpful and I'm not a fan of these types of book blurbs. And then we'll talk about the good book reviews that I think are really helpful, the ones that I really like to read. I'm going to give examples in each category. We're going to talk about it a little bit and I would love to hear your thoughts if this is something that you've even considered. Probably not for as many hours as I have. Oh yeah, this one's hilarious. There are 4 blurbs on the back of this book, 3 of which fall under the category of how is this helpful? USA Today says, fantastical. I'm so glad that this fantasy book is fantastical. Chicago Tribune says, a sumptuous fantasy. Oh, I'm glad it's fantasy and good. And Publishers Weekly says, extraordinary, masterfully crafted. I'm glad you liked it. How does this help me to know? I guess the point is, look, here's an endorsement. Here's someone from a reputable name, we assume. I don't know who works there. Here's a reputable name, a known name that said, good. Next book. This is a personal grievance of mine. The Book That Wouldn't Burn. One of the blurbs says, excellent, on par with George R.R. Martin. I don't like these kinds of blurbs. I don't like blurbs that say, for fans of X, unless it's actually really similar to X. or comparing it to another author, or saying this is on par with another author or another book, because I feel like this sets bad expectations. I personally don't think that The Book That Wouldn't Burn is similar to A Song of Ice and Fire. Sound off in the comments if you disagree with me. Personally, I don't see the correlation. And so if you have a big fan of Martin, picks this up, sees that, and then their expectations are set, this is on par with Martin. Now I realize that on par doesn't mean the same as, it means quality is similar. But I think that this is just an instance of this author is popular and well-loved and well-respected. This author, I would like, this author is well-loved and well-respected. This author, I think, should be well-loved and well-respected, and is already. So we mesh together, even though they don't mesh that well. Along with what I said with the Book That Wouldn't Burn complaint, I'm not a fan of bad comparisons. I'm okay, so this is an example of both things. Lord of the Rings for the modern generation, an epic world full of history, depth, and adventure. I agree. This is a more modern feeling Lord of the Rings, and I loved it. On the back, we have a quote that says, "If you like Brandon Sanderson, you'll love this." Why, though? This is soft magic, not hard magic. This is quest and adventure and developing a fellowship to get your object, to do the... It's very Lord of the Rings. It's very, very Lord of the Rings. Not Sanderson. Don't get me wrong, I love Sanderson, but I don't... Why? Because it's super readable? Is that because it's thick? Because there's a lot of pages? Another perfectly satisfying read from the unstoppable Emily Henry. A total delight. These books are a gift. So just, to me, as a reader, personally, that's not helpful. I don't need to know that some people somewhere at some point said this book is good. That's me. I don't look for that in blurbs personally. I don't look at... Well, these are just authors, but for instance, for this one where it was review websites, reviewing platforms that said good. To me, I don't look at a USA Today thing that says thumbs up and think, oh, okay, well then I know it's good because USA Today said thumbs up. You know what I mean? That's not helpful to me. Next up, one of the hottest books of 2020. This is from New York Post for My Dark Vanessa. A book about grooming. A very tragic, very intimate, and personal telling, this is fiction, telling of a young girl groomed by her teacher and the fallout and how that affects her life even as an adult. One of the hottest books of 2020. I would like you to explain why you chose that. One of the greatest books, one of the most important books, one of my favorite books of 2020. All of these things are a reasonable thing for someone to say. But describing this as hot, I realize that they probably just mean it's gonna sell well. Actually, I don't know what they mean. But how is this helpful in describing what this book is going to be, setting expectations? Why? I just want to know why. Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Readers can experience this spellbinding magical world the way that Neil Gaiman wanted us to all along. Readers can expect to experience what Neil Gaiman wanted us to experience. Readers can expect that this book will do what it's trying to do. Neil Gaiman wrote the book in a way that gets the point across. Like, that's what this, what do you mean? I'm glad that readers will experience this spellbinding magical world in the way that Neil Gaiman wanted us to all. I'm glad that Neil Gaiman accomplished his goals. Is that not, like, how does this help me as a reader to identify what this book is or what to expect? The author did a good job. Ship of Magic. I love this one. There are, there's one blurb on the front, which is fine, I guess. As addictive as morphine. Fine. And then there are two on the back. One says, Hob is superb, and the other one says, Hob is a remarkable storyteller. How is this helpful? How does this... I'm glad you like the author. I mean, I realize that Hob at this point is, and this is a, I think this is a special edition. I think this is a later edition of the book. I could be wrong. I understand that Hob's name speaks for herself among a lot of fantasy nerds. But if I saw this at the bookstore as a nautical loving junkie and was like, ooh, ship, pretty cover, neato, I wonder if I'll like this. Let me look at the endorsements. The author is cool. I have no idea if I should read this or what to expect. And then another theme that I see a lot is there are certain authors, if it's an author that's popular enough that their name is kind of like, they're a household name. They're not just well known in the genre that they write in, but like everyone knows this name. People like George R.R. Martin or like Stephen King, that it's just like, okay, we know him. We know who he is, whether we read or not. I find that they blurb a lot of books and most of their blurbs are unhelpful to me. You know, Martin, it's kind of a joke that most of his blurbs say, the way fantasy ought to be written. And it's just like copy and paste on so many books. Although sometimes he does actually write a personalized blurb, but mostly it's just like that tagline. And King, too, does this a lot, where he'll just 2 words. You get 2 words out of me, and that's my blurb. For instance, in His Majesty's Dragon, oh, it's on the front. It says, terrifyingly entertaining. Okay. King liked it. He gave his thumbs up. So it's kind of like the same sort of category as Publishers Weekly saying, thumbs up. King here, he said, thumbs up. Is that helpful to me? As if I were a King fan, if I were a mega fan of King, would I look at this and say, Stephen King said yes, I know it's good? Because this book isn't anything like Stephen King. This isn't his writing style. This isn't his character work style. This isn't how he writes his horror or his thrillers or whatever. This is not King. This is nothing like King. Not that it's being compared to him, but my point is him saying good book. Does it help me? Personally, I feel no. I feel like the way I structured this is the front heavy of the front side of this book seems like just whining. Just like a lot of like, so Murphy, why do you care this much? I don't know, actually. But now let's get into the good stuff. Now let's talk about the blurbs that I like, that I actually find helpful, that I don't feel like is just like, okay, thumbs up. That's what this blurb was. That's all this blurb was. It didn't help me. Now let's talk about blurbs that I actually really, really like and I find so helpful. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel new sympathy for the curmudgeons in your life. A Man Called Ove. This is helpful! This is so true. It has humor, it has really emotional, moving, sad moments, and it portrays a curmudgeon. Uh-oh, I gotta leave. I have a live stream that's starting literally right now, so pause. Hi, it's been 3 hours about that, so I'm back to finish the video now. Sorry if anything looks different. Anyway, I talked to you about Ove. I think that this is a great blurb because in just a quick sentence, it lets you know the vibes that you're gonna get, the gambit of emotions you're gonna get, and the core person and thing that's going to be happening, and that's looking at this curmudgeon and going through life with him. So I love this blurb. I think that that's what, to me, that's what I look for in a blurb. Annihilation, I tried not to pull any classics from my shelf because classics typically have better blurbs because they have had more time, I guess, to get more iterations of blurbs. And Annihilation is like, I don't know if you would consider it a classic or not with how old it is, but anyway, I love the blurbs on Annihilation. A tense and chilling psychological thriller about an unraveling expedition and the strangeness within us. A little Kubrick, a lot of Lovecraft. The novel builds with an unbearable tension and a claustrophobic dread that linger long after. Loved it. This is such good, and I know it's long, I know it's a long blurb, but this is such a good blurb because it talks about the feeling that it invokes in you. It talks about how claustrophobic it is. It compares it to other authors, which I agree that this is very Lovecraftian. It compares it to other authors that might give you an idea of what kind of vibe. It didn't say just randomly Brandon Sanderson because he's because he's popular. It actually gave you real good comp authors, and it tells you that it leaves you with tension, claustrophobia. Oh, claustrophobic. I think I described this book as claustrophobic, and I didn't do that because I read the blurb. I described it as claustrophobic too while I was reading it. It does feel claustrophobic. It talks about how the dread lingers long after. That's so true. Anyway, great blurb. Love that blurb. The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This has a load of reviews. The whole back of this cover is just a list of blurbs. And honestly, it's a load of really strong blurbs that do exactly what I like blurbs to do. It tells you what the story is and sets expectations. It isn't just like, it's fantastic. Okay, thanks. I'm glad you liked it. How does that help me? I'm glad you liked it. Someone likes every book. How does that help me? This actually tells me what to expect. But the blurb on the front of the cover, which is by Time magazine, says, "A novel about the truths, some wonderful, some terrible, that children know and adults do not." I love when books tease you with what the story is, like what's going to be explored, not just what the plot is doing. Mapping the interior, a quick, great one. Emotionally raw, disturbing, creepy, and brilliant. You will not be unmoved. That's great. That gives you an idea of the kind of emotions that are going to be pulled from this story, and that it's going to be a moving story in one way or another. I love it. I love it. Great blurb. You did your job. Congratulations. A Natural History of Dragons. Fans of fantasy, science, and history will adore this rich and absorbing tale of discovery. More! Told in the style of a Victorian memoir, courageous, intelligent, and determined. Isabella's account is colorful, vigorous, and absorbing. That's an amazing blurb. That's better than I've ever described this novel. Apparently I need to read blurbs more because sometimes it's like, that's perfect. That's a perfect description of what this book is. Between those two blurbs, boom, book described. I love it. A Monster Calls. A wrenching tale of loss and grief, beautiful and achingly sad. That's a great blurb for this. I know exactly what I should expect to get out of this book. You've told me that we're exploring loss and grief. You've told me that this is not going to be a hunky-dory happy story. Perfect. And then I love when books, much like Ocean at the End of the Lane, I love when books, let me show you, when books have a whole backside of blurb. This book was great! And it was. I really like this book. So what's the point? What am I even talking about at this point? I don't know. I don't know why I care so much, but I've realized that a person or like a Kirkus review or something saying thumbs up isn't good enough. Like, that doesn't help me, because just because you liked it doesn't mean that I'm gonna like it. We're different humans. We like different things. What helps me, what I love about a blurb is when it's informative. It's a quick shot of, here's what you can expect from the story. This is why it's great. Not just, this is great, but this is why it's great. I don't know why I would care enough about this to make a whole video off of it, but some of these blurbs are dumb, right? Right? Like, some of these blurbs. Hob is superb. Readers can expect the spellbinding magical world the way that Neil Gaiman wanted us to all along. I'm glad Neil Gaiman did his job. Terrifically entertaining. Who are you helping with that? Anyway, do you even read book blurbs? Do you even care? Am I alone in this? I've learned that I care too much about book blurbs, and that I really want a blurb to be useful to me, not just to be an endorsement. I liked it, so you will too, but here's why I think this book is great. So now you decide, dear reader, does that sound great? And no matter what, I could still hate the book. Like, there are blurbs on books that are like, I love, the main character is so, I'll show you the one. The most unlikely yet likable hero since a certain hobbit rushed out of Bag End, leaving his second breakfast half finished. That's quite the endorsement you've just given me for a protagonist that I find more boring than mud. But that's also personal preference, so you didn't do anything wrong. The point is, there can still be a really solid, really unique blurb given based off of why they found that book magnificent, and I might disagree with it being magnificent in that way. That's fine. You've done your job. We're different humans. That'll happen. But at least you've said something more than good. A little bit. You said a little bit more. Comparing it to The Hobbit is actually kind of broaching on what I complained about with The Book That Wouldn't Burn. You can't just do that. You can't take one of the biggest names in all of fantasy and be like, As good as a hobbit coming out of baggin'. Wow! That's a big one. Anyway, do you care about blurbs? Do you care? Am I alone in shouting into the ether? Are there blurbs that you read that you're like, how though? How is that? What do you mean? Or do you just completely ignore them because they're useless? Because that's valid too. And if you are a writer, if you have any experience with how blurbs are made and what their purpose is, I would love to have an inside look on this. I really searched, I really wanted to know, but it was hard to find information on it other than just like, here's where you go, you know, buy a Kirkus review or something like that. So I would love to know more of the behind the scenes of how this sort of thing is selected and what and why and what I just would love to, I would love to learn more. So if you happen to be in the know, please teach me. What do you think is a helpful blurb? What do you think is a non-helpful blurb? Do you care at all? I would love to chat with you more in the comments. Bye.